Terror on the campus of Evergreen High School, 30 miles west of Denver.
This week was one of those where it seems like every time there was a news story, it was a tragic, heartbreaking news story. It reminds me of how grief and loss are so present with us.
Charlie Kirk has been shot.
We don't always know why we feel the way that we do, and we need just some help to unpack it. Hello and welcome to the March or Die show today. Glad to have you joining this conversation. This is the show where we do our very best every single episode to give you both the perspectives and principles you need to navigate an uncertain future, to march when it would be easier to stay where you are and die. My name is Jeremy Stalnecker. I am your host today, and we're going to jump into something that is, I believe, very timely and very important. And I hope, and this is my prayer today, that our conversation will be helpful to you. So many things going on in our world and on social media. As this is coming out today, I think this is the 17th of September. So Wednesday, the 17th of September. I'm actually recording a few days earlier on Friday, just before we get into the weekend. So I'm recording a few days before this is released. And as I'm doing this recording, as I'm making this recording, we've just come through a very difficult week. And, if you listen to this show, you know exactly what I'm talking about, I would imagine. But it seems like we have these moments where nationally, things happen. We have an event, and it's a big event. We celebrated or remembered 9/11 this week. Again, as I'm recording, remembering that event and what a really life-changing, world-altering event 9/11 was. And we paused to remember and to think about all that took place on that day. So that happened this week. In addition to that, we dealt with, or we observed, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And again, if you're listening to this show, I'm sure you're familiar with who Charlie Kirk is, but 31 years old, an incredible outsized influence on the world, brilliant, known for a lot of different things, certainly in the political world, as the founder of Turning Point USA, mobilizing college-aged young people to take their conservative values and their conservative voices forward. And he did so many things on college campuses and through his organization to equip and mobilize young people. Man, we saw, and there's video at one of his rallies in Utah, him losing his life. He was assassinated. He was shot and killed. And man, what a tragic event, and so much attached to that. Also, in the same day that Charlie Kirk was killed, there was a school shooting in Colorado. This week, we've also seen images of a young lady losing her life on a train, killed, murdered at the hands of a lifelong criminal. And it goes on. These are the big ones that are in the news and the things that we're dealing with nationally. Again, sometimes you see these things one at a time. We have an event at a time. But this week was one of those where it seems like every time there was a news story, it was a tragic, heartbreaking news story. And it's easy for us to be detached from some of these things. And we can see someone murdered. And we become accustomed to this through social media and through our news, 24-hour news cycle, all these things. We can become almost desensitized to it. We don't necessarily connect to the reality that a person lost their life, that these things have happened. But this was one of those weeks, again, where it was thing after thing, event after event. And then I think in a bigger way than maybe we're accustomed to, the Charlie Kirk event, many of us are connected to him just through his work and listening to him speak and watching him debate. And we see him on social media and on the news. Certainly as we come through this last election cycle, he was very vocal and very supportive of conservatives getting out and voting. So even if you didn't know him personally, it's easy to feel a connection to someone like him and what he represents, and so many people did, and all of this reminds me, and I think again you're connected to this, you understand this. It reminds me of how grief and loss are so present with us. Grief and loss. We deal with the loss of people that we care about, even in some cases, people we didn't know personally, but had an impact on our lives. And we deal with that loss, and that loss leads to grief. And we don't exactly know how to process these thoughts and process these feelings and how to think about these things. And so, with all of that as the backdrop, I just wanted to take some time today on the podcast to talk about grief and talk about loss, and give some thoughts on how we should respond to these feelings of grief and the reality of loss. And maybe for you, it's just coming through last week. You're trying to unpack some of these feelings and some of these thoughts and trying to understand what to do. Maybe that's where you are. Maybe you're dealing with something that is very personal to you, the loss of a loved one, someone very close to you. You're dealing with this grief and the process of grief as you're trying to deal with the loss of a loved one, someone that you care about. So maybe it's something that happened outside of your world. You're not specifically or personally connected to it, but you're feeling the loss and feeling the grief. That's very real. Maybe it is a personal thing. Whatever it is, all of us can relate to this feeling of loss and grief. And I just wanted to take some time to think about this. And here's what I'm going to do today. And I'm trying to be very upfront with you. A lot has been written on this topic. If you go and Google, how do I deal with grief? How do I deal with loss? You're going to have some very educated people talk about cycles of grief and what each part of that cycle will look like. And a lot of folks who have dealt very personally with deep loss and deep grief and deep hurt will give you advice. There's a ton of information, a ton of very helpful information, and people who have been very helpful in this space that you have access to, just like I have access to. And so I'm not trying to duplicate that or really even add to that. I just want to share with you some thoughts. I have done a lot of counseling, individual counseling. I have, for better or worse, had the opportunity to counsel a lot of folks through some very, very deep, very personal loss and grief. Loss of a loved one due to illness, loss of loved ones due to, age and some age-related illnesses, things that would be very expected, but also the loss of family members who are young, and the loss that comes at the hands of someone who took a life, a murder, and the family dealing with that and grappling with that, or the loss on the other side of suicide, dealing with that and trying to understand it and understand the grief and work through that process. I've had a lot of exposure to that, and certainly others are more experienced in this space than I am, but I have had a lot of exposure to helping people walk through the process of grief. And I would encourage you, if this is something that you're dealing with, get with a pastor, get with a counselor, someone who can sit down with you and walk you through this. There are very good processes and kind of best practices to deal with this. And so this is not meant to in any way take away from that. Do that. Find some folks who can walk through this with you individually. But one of the unique things that's happened, and this is, again, the events last week related to Charlie Kirk and his loss, a lot of people are dealing with very personal feelings of grief, even though they didn't personally know him. And so sometimes we're dealing with feelings and thoughts and uncertainties that we have a hard time pinpointing and necessarily understanding why we're feeling the way that we're feeling. Some have written on this, and again, some great opinions on this. You can find those. But as we walk through this, we don't always know why we feel the way that we do, and we need just some help to unpack it. And so that's what I want to give you today, just some thoughts on how we can unpack this, what we should do in the face of grief and difficulty. And I want to be a help to you. So here are some thoughts. I'm going to give you, I think I have 8 things written down here. I'll go through them quickly. Maybe you can write them down or think about these as it pertains to your situation. And then I have a few verses. What does the Bible say about grief and loss? And so we're going to look at those as well. And again, my goal, my hope is just to be helpful to you. All right. So number 1, when dealing with grief, when dealing with loss, understand, this is number 1. What you feel is what you feel. What you feel is what you feel. All of us deal with grief and loss in different ways. And that's okay. We tend to think that how we deal with loss and how we deal with grief and what we think about the loss and the grief and the difficulty around us, that is the way that it's done. we'll see other people who deal with grief and loss in a different way. Maybe it's very emotional. People are wired emotionally, and they deal with things by crying and maybe getting away and whatever. They deal with things in a certain way. And then you have those who maybe have more of a stoic personality that don't necessarily express outwardly, but internally they process what's going on. Maybe you see the way others are handling a situation and you feel like what you're dealing with is abnormal because how you're dealing with it is not how other people deal with it. Listen to me. Again, this is a lot of observation. This is personal experience. This is walking through difficulty and loss and grief and hurt with other people. What you feel is what you feel. And your process for dealing with grief, I'm going to talk about some of the things you can do in this process, but your process is your process. How you feel isn't wrong. And to pile guilt on top of how you already feel about what's happening is not helpful. We're all different. We all process things differently, and that's okay. And I need to start there because you need to let yourself off the hook. Maybe your sense of empathy is not as developed as other people. Maybe you don't respond as emotionally as other people and you feel bad about that. Maybe you are overly emotional about things and you respond very emotionally when things happen and you feel bad about that. Don't feel bad about it. How you feel is how you feel, and it's okay. You need to know that. Don't let other people tell you how you need to grieve. Now, that being said, you need to understand the process of grief. You need to understand how to move beyond your grief. You can't become stalled out in your loss and grief. You need to be carried forward. But how you feel right now, that is unique to you, and it's okay. So that's number one. Number two, realize that you're not alone. This is something that happens when loss occurs, particularly in a community or a family. You grieve different than other people. And so the conclusion can be, well, I am alone. I'm hurting in ways that no one else is hurting. I'm dealing with things and thinking about things and processing things that no one else is thinking about or feeling or processing. Listen, you're not alone. What you see in other people may not be the same as what you are feeling. They're not dealing with this the way that you're dealing with it, but you're not alone. There are a lot of hurting people right now. It's been said that we should be kind because everyone we deal with is hurting. Man, there's a lot of truth to that. All of us have things that we're dealing with, and all of us are hurting in our own unique ways. But when we see an innocent person sitting on a train killed by a career criminal who should have been in jail instead of out on the street, that impacts us all different, but it impacts all of us. When we hear about children being violently attacked in a school setting, that impacts all of us. Maybe different, but it impacts all of us. When someone like Charlie Kirk is violently taken away, and we think about his wife and his children, his family, and the work that he's done, and we all have some kind of a connection to that. Listen, that impacts all of us. You are not alone. This goes back to number one. How you feel is how you feel. You may be unique in how you're processing this, but you're not alone in the need to process. Other people are hurting. Please know that. Please know that. Make it okay to grieve. Make it okay to grieve. Number three, this is how I think about this. You're okay. It's okay to feel the way you feel. No one's going to tell you it's wrong because it's not. But you're also not alone. There are a lot of other people dealing with things. Don't isolate yourself by saying, well, I'm alone. No one else knows. There are other people who know. Which takes us to number three, find a safe place to talk. I cannot even begin to explain the power in having a safe place to process what we're going through. Now, there are counselors and there are trained folks who can instruct you as you work through grief. They can tell you what to do. Here are the things you need to do. Here's how you can deal with that. And that's very, very helpful. But sometimes what we need is a loved one, a friend, someone who cares about us that will allow us to talk. What does that mean? It means you need to have a safe place. This is someone who cares about you, who will sit down with you and let you share what's on your heart and mind. And that can be raw. It can be emotional. It can even be expressing the feelings that other people, man, they're crying about this. I don't have the same empathy for that. Share what's going on in your heart and mind. You need to get this out of your head and out of your heart and into the open. There's something about the light of conversation and sharing and testimony that really brings some healing. It begins to restore some order. Don't let your thoughts and feelings fester in your heart and mind. Share them with someone who cares about you. Now, this safe place may be someone who can say, hey, I hear what you're saying, but it's going to be all right. We can walk through this together. It's someone who can help put guardrails on your thoughts and your feelings. Now, someone who needs to let you talk. Again, how you feel is how you feel. You're not alone. Someone who needs to let you process, and that's okay. And do it in your way. They shouldn't make you feel guilty for how you're processing. But it should be someone that you trust enough who can put their arm around you if that's what you need, who can encourage you if that's what you need, who can get you back on track if that's what you need. But find a safe place to talk. If you don't have a safe place, often this is what a pastor or a faith leader can do for you. It's a friend. It's a family member. You need to find this person. And you might say, Jeremy, I don't have that person in my life. It doesn't exist. Find a church, go to that church and ask to sit down and talk to one of the pastors. That's a safe place to talk. Find a counselor. That's a safe place to talk. You need to be able to process what you're going through. So you have all of these inputs. It's the grief, it's the loss, it's the hurt, and that impacts you. How you feel is how you feel. It's okay. You're not alone in the hurt, but you may be unique in how you're processing it. That's fine. Well, one of the ways to begin processing in a healthy way is to get it all out. Begin working through this verbally. Talk to someone. All right, number 4, remember to focus on God. Now, I could spend an entire episode talking about this, and I won't. This is why I think it's important to get with someone who shares your faith system. I don't love that phrase, but who believes the way that you believe about God and about eternity and about God's role in our lives. And I'm a Christian. I think everyone who listens to this show knows that. And I believe that God's work in our life is a sovereign work, that God has a plan and a purpose for us, that bad things happen because of sin. I've talked about all of this, that we have a relationship with God or can have a relationship with God because of what Jesus did for us on the cross, that we are made a new creation. I've talked about all of these things. But I also believe that there is sin and brokenness and hurt in our world, but that ultimately God brings victory. God is ultimately in control of outcomes. We may not understand why something happens, but God can redeem even the brokenness and the hurt and the grief if we'll allow him to. So at some point in this process, we understand how we feel. We understand we're not alone. We've been able to talk through this with others. We need to turn our hearts and our eyes and our attention to God and ask the question, God, what are you trying to teach me here? What can be learned? What can be valuable for the benefit of others? 2 Corinthians in the first chapter tells us that often our grief is an opportunity for us to learn so that we can help others who also grieve. We can help others who have also hurt. How do we redeem brokenness? How do we redeem hurt and loss? Well, it's redeemed when it's used to be a blessing to others. God, how can I use this for the benefit of others? What are you trying to teach me? So remember, focus on God. Number 5, man, this is a big one. Number 5, don't spend time in regret. Don't spend time in regret. I've talked to so many folks who have lost loved ones, and their entire view of that situation is through the lens of regret. I wish I had. I wish I had spent more time with them. I wish I had been kinder. I wish I hadn't said those words to them that were our last words, our last conversation. It wasn't super kind. I wish I had done this, or I wish I had done that. We can spend so much time in regret, trying, looking back, to change things that we have no ability or control over. We have no ability to change. We have no control over. Don't go there. Don't go there. Don't spend time in regret. Now, there's going to be some sorrow. That's natural. Again, how you feel is how you feel. But refuse to live there. I had a conversation with someone not too long ago that lost someone very close to them, and they lost them to suicide, a tragic situation. And he was telling me that in that process, and this is very common in a suicide loss, in that process, he started to ask the what if questions and what should I have questions, and began to experience a lot of regret, and with that regret, sorrow. But he had to come to the point, this is what he was explaining to me, had to come to the point where he moved beyond that regret so that he could move forward. He could go forward in his life. A lot of people get stuck in the tragedies that come into their lives. They get stuck because they spend their time focusing on regret, the I wish I had or what could I have kind of questions. Don't spend time there. Don't spend time there. It's not helpful to you. It doesn't do anything to bring back or change what's happened. Don't spend time in regret. Number 6, this goes with number 5, but number 6, learn the lessons that are to be learned. What lessons are to be learned here? What lessons from the person's life do I need to learn? What lessons from the situation should be learned? If there are lessons to be learned, am I learning them? Maybe this is an opportunity to sit down with a journal. I talk about journaling sometimes as we walk through these issues and these situations. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to sit down with a journal and begin writing my thoughts and writing my feelings and writing my hurts and even some of my regrets. I'm moving past those, but I'm writing those down, and I'm trying to learn the lessons that are to be learned. Again, redeeming the situation, finding value in a very difficult or broken situation. What can be learned? When we're talking about someone who was very influential in our lives, what lessons would they want me to learn? When we're talking about someone who lived in a way that was motivating to us or encouraging to us or whatever the case, what lessons are to be learned? Maybe it was a situation that was very bad. What lessons are to be learned? What are the lessons that I can onboard? What are the things that I can learn? This redeems the very bad, very difficult situation. I've said that a few times, but we need to find value in it. Now, this is not the same as I think what counselors call the silver lining approach to this. I'm not saying look for the silver lining. That is not even a little bit what I'm saying. What I'm suggesting is that we learn lessons that can add value to our lives. We're not trying to add meaning or value to what happened. Well, maybe this is why that happened. I'm not sure that's helpful. We need to learn what can be learned. What lessons can be learned? Number 7, live differently in response to the loss of someone that we care about, to this loss, to this grief. Live differently. Change some of those things that come into mind as regret. I wish I had been kinder. I wish I had said things different. I wish I had spent more time with them. These things that present themselves as regret, well, live different. The people that you do have in your life, the people that you do have an influence over, maybe you need to, these are the lessons learned, begin applying some of those lessons to your current relationships and current situations. Live differently in response to your loss. Now, I'll caution you here. Often when people deal with grief and deep loss, particularly the loss of a loved one, a major life situation, a deep hurt, they begin to change everything in their lives. Well, I'm selling the house and we're moving. I'm quitting the job and I'm going to go do something else. There's this major trying to regain control by doing something different. Again, that's not what I'm talking about. I think you need a counselor, you need help, you need some people who can help kind of guide you through that, walk you through that. But in the midst of grief, that's not the time for major life change. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is having learned the lessons that you learned, how are you going to apply those lessons to your life? How will you live different as it relates to other people and relates to the opportunities that you have? How are you going to live different? But change what you would regret. Here it is. Carry a legacy forward. Did the person that you are experiencing this loss over have a legacy that you can carry forward? What did they care about? What was important to them? What did they leave behind that was valuable? Now, And I know that not everyone who is dealing with loss is dealing with the loss of someone that left a good legacy behind. Sometimes the grief is that the relationship was so bad or the legacy was so tainted or so broken. And I get that. I understand that. If this doesn't apply in your situation, then it doesn't apply. But often there were legacy situations or legacy environments, things left behind that we can pick up and carry forward. I think of this in the life of a Charlie Kirk. There will never be another Charlie Kirk, and there's no one who should try to duplicate him or be him. We all need to be who we uniquely are. But he had a legacy of confronting people with truth. He had a legacy of standing up for his faith and communicating the gospel as clearly as he possibly could. He had a legacy that impacted a lot of people, and we can do our best to carry that legacy forward. Again, in our own setting, in our own context, with our own gifts, but carry that legacy forward. Don't let what happened be the end. Do something different. Carry that legacy forward. We need to remember the person who we are grieving over. We need to remember them for the sake of being better. A memorial is not valuable unless it causes us to do something. 9/11 happened. We every year remember, and it's not a celebration of the event, but we really do celebrate and memorial those who did such heroic things on that day. And we celebrate the human spirit, and we celebrate the patriotism that came out of that. And there's so much that we can look to and celebrate. Again, not in a party sense. That's not what I'm talking about. But we can remember, and we can, with pride, look back to what so many people did on that day. That's very, very helpful. But it's only helpful if it motivates us to do something. We remember, we memorialize for the sake of being better. How does remembering this person or this situation make us better? I'll say this too. Even in a bad situation, we can memorialize or remember and become better for having done so. There are things that can be learned, even in a bad situation, that make us better. Remember for the sake of being better. And then number 8, we need to ask this question. What would they want me to do or to know? What would they, the person who I'm thinking about, the person who I lost, the loved one, what would they want me to know or do? Maybe I didn't have a personal relationship with them, but I knew them from a distance. What would they want me to know or do? Listen, we lose people that we care about or people that we respect, and we spend so much time grieving over them. And there is a process of grief, and that takes time. But we need to get to the place eventually where we move beyond grief and start asking the question, what would they want me to know? What have I learned from this? And what would they want me to do? The best way to memorialize those who've gone before us, we talk about this a lot in the veteran community. People who've lost their lives in combat. Around Memorial Day, we talk about this. What's the best thing I could do to memorialize someone that was heroic, someone that gave their life for a bigger cause, someone that, whatever, went before me, the person that I'm grieving over? What's the best way to remember them? By asking the question, what would they want me to know or do? And then taking that on board and doing it. We need to live in a way that responds to the person that we are grieving. Coming out of 9/11, there are so many great organizations, so many great individuals who have done things that they never would have done were it not for the testimony of firefighters and police officers and other first responders, really paying the ultimate price to be a blessing and a help to those who needed them most. Out of the images and out of the actions of 9/11 have come so many good things. Why? Because there are individuals who ask the question, I'm grieving over this person. What would they want me to know? What would they want me to do? Again, quickly. What you feel is what you feel. Number 2, you're not alone. You need to find a safe place to talk. You need to remember to focus on God. Don't spend time in regret. Learn the lessons that are to be learned. Live differently and ask the question, what would they want me to do or no. And that's just a list of things. As I was working through this, I thought, this is how I need to look at this. And these are the things that I need to do in this time of grief and loss and hurt and trying to make sense of it all. Here's some verses. Psalm 34, verse 18. The Lord is near unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivereth him out of them all. The psalmist was crying out to God, and he said, the Lord is near those that are of a broken heart, and he saves those that are of a contrite or downtrodden spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous. And this is something that is, again, universal. Those who are trying to do right are going to suffer, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. He's near. He's near. What a truth. Remember back to focus on God. Focus on God. He's near those who are struggling. Psalm 16:11. Thou wilt show me the path of life. In thy presence is fullness of joy. At thy right hand there are pleasures forevermore. Draw near to the Lord when we're hurting. The Bible says he'll draw near to us as we draw near to him. When you're hurting, where do you go? Go into the Word of God. Spend time in the Psalms. Get close to the Lord and let God, through the Holy Spirit, work in your life. I'm thankful for this truth found in Revelation chapter 21 and verse 4. This is the end of the book. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Listen, there is hope that in the end, God has already secured ultimate victory, but our tears will be wiped away. There will be no more pain. There will be no more grief. When we experience loss and grief, it can feel like this moment is going to last forever. And the truth and the encouragement found in many verses, but verses like Revelation 21:4, is that the moment will come when God will wipe away the tears and he will take away death and sorrow and crying, and there will be no more pain. Psalm 30 and verse 5, for his anger endureth but a moment, in his favor is life. Again, this is part of a much larger passage. And here's the point. Weeping, Psalm 30, verse 5, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. How you're feeling, it's a temporary feeling. It's deep and it's hurtful and it's confusing, but joy comes in the morning. You're in the darkness right now. You're in the night right now, but joy will come in the morning. I love these words from the Apostle Paul in 1 Thessalonians 4:13 and 14. He said this, but I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that you sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. The Apostle Paul was speaking to people experiencing loss and grief, and he said, look, I want you to understand there's hope. Because of Jesus. One of the messages that Charlie Kirk was very good at delivering is there's hope because of Jesus. The resurrection of Jesus Christ gives us all hope. And for those who put their faith in Christ, there is forgiveness of sin and there is eternal life. There is hope. And I know that the hurt of not only the events of this last week, but whatever you're going through in your life, that hurt can be so deep. And the grief can be so deep. But there is help. There is hope. There is healing. There is comfort. There is joy. There is peace to be found in a relationship with Jesus Christ. Listen, I know as we come through weeks like the one that we just had, and I'm sure we'll have more in the future, maybe you're going through something personally that is very personal to you. Sorrow, loss, grief, it can feel like it will last forever. It's a dark cloud that hangs over our head. Remember, how you feel, it's how you feel. It's okay. There's a process to work through this, and you need to work through the process. Get with someone who can help you. Talk about it. Don't isolate. Don't stay away. Don't say no one knows what it's like. People know. Others have hurt and hurt right now. Get with someone you trust who you can talk through some of these things with. Voice what's on your heart and your mind. Focus on God. Draw near to him. Let him draw near to you. Learn the lessons that are to be learned. Live different in light of the person that we have lost, that you've lost. Carry forward a legacy if there's one to be carried forward. And ask the question, what would they want me to know? What would they want me to do? I hope this is a help to you. Some thoughts, some verses. There's so much more to be said and to be done. But listen, unfortunately, because of sin, loss and hurt and grief, it's a part of this life. But ultimate victory is found in a relationship with Christ. I hope that will be a help to you. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do that. Share this content, this episode out with others. There are a lot of people hurting in our world, but there is hope. And I want to encourage you with that thought. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to talking to you next time.